Greetings again everyone. Today I have a new full-frame autofocus lens from Meike. With a very popular design, Meike is still quite new to including autofocus in their lenses, so this new 85mm f1.4 is quite an ambitious design for them, and its price tag of only $470 or £390 here in the UK is potentially fantastic value for money for what you're getting here. Any 85mm f1.4 on a full-frame camera is going to produce seriously dramatic images with a lovely narrow depth of field, perfect for all kinds of portrait and subject photography. The lens will be available on Sony E and Nikon Z mount, and I'd like to thank Meike for providing me with a copy of this lens for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review. The lens itself is pretty bulky, as you can see, and being made of plastic, it weighs about 750 grams. Its body has a slightly cheap feel to it, a few slightly rough edges, but nothing you'd really consider a problem. At the rear we get a metal lens mount with a USB-C port for firmware update, and an attractive red-coloured weather sealing gasket. In front of that comes an aperture ring, which turns with quite heavy clicks every third of an f-stop. On the side comes an auto manual focus switch, as well as a customizable focus hold button. Then we get a large manual focus ring, which turns smoothly enough, but has a slightly rough feel to it. I found that the lens's manual focus response was a bit slow, jerky, and imprecise, so not a pleasant manual focusing experience here. As you can see here, the lens suffers from a moderate level of focus breathing. The lens's autofocus motor is silent, but very pedestrian. It needs a bit of a dose of steroids here really. Not only does it move quite slowly, but it also takes a few moments to properly lock onto your subject, although when it does it's generally accurate. So yes, the autofocus does work, but only very slowly on a Nikon Z7 camera anyway. The lens has a 77mm filter thread size, and it comes with quite a deep plastic hood. It does not feature image stabilization. Overall, the build quality is fine, but the autofocus motor pretty rudimentary to say the least, although it does get you there eventually. Oh, and on my Nikon Z7, I can report that the lens transmitted EXIF information correctly, and correctly worked with the camera's in-body stabilization. Alright, image quality now. As I mentioned, I'll be testing it on my Nikon Z7 with its 45 megapixel sensor. In-camera corrections are turned on. In the middle of the image at f1.4, we're seeing quite a lot of detail here, but we are seeing some ghosting on contrasting edges, which reduces contrast quite a bit. Corner image quality is very soft, as you can see. At f2 we see more contrast in the corners, and back in the middle, sharpness and contrast are now excellent. At f2.8, image quality is razor sharp in the middle, and the corners are looking better now. At f4 the corners are quite sharp, and f5.6 and f8 very sharp. f11 and f16 look about the same. I have a feeling that the lens isn't quite stopping down as far as it should here, because the image should be a bit softer than this due to diffraction. Overall, well, the lens could be a lot sharper at f1.4, especially in the corners, but if you stop down the aperture, it quickly gets better. The results will look better on a lower resolution camera. Okay, let's turn off in-camera corrections and take a look at distortion and vignetting. The good news here is that the lens has no distortion, and while at f1.4 the corners are quite dark, that vignetting falls quite softly across the image frame. At f2 and f2.8 the corners get brighter. The lens's minimum focus distance is quite long here, about a full meter, which can be quite limiting and annoying when shooting anything small. At f1.4 the image is just a little soft, but f2 looks sharp again. Let's see how the lens works against bright light. There's some broad flaring here, damaging contrast, but at least that flaring isn't too opaque. Next, bokeh. It's really good news here. Those autofocus backgrounds look soft and generally gorgeous, which is really pleasing. And finally, related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. Surprisingly, it's actually very low here, even from f1.4. Overall, well, as you've seen, this is a lens with a number of optical issues, as well as quite slow autofocus and a long minimum focus distance, so this is not a high quality lens. But still, it's not necessarily bad value. Even if it's not so sharp, it still produces some pretty beautiful images with gorgeous bokeh, and getting an 85mm f1.4 full frame autofocus lens for $470 is still a really attractive proposition for a lot of people, so I can see some people being interested in this one. So long, suckers. If ever you get bored, give me a call and I'll come round and kill you. Oh, sorry, that's the outro for my other videos, the ones with baby kittens in. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you found this review helpful. And special thanks to my supporters over on Patreon. They get all kinds of exclusive bonus content, so check out the link in the description below, and ciao for now.